Hal Elrod. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's good to
Ryan,
see you,
thanks for
dude.
having me at the lake house, man. This is beautiful.
Yeah, it's okay. It'll do.
Yeah, not bad.
It'll do for now.
Not bad. You're living my dream, man. A
Your
house
dream?
on the lake. That's one of my dreams, yeah.
So what other dreams have you not fulfilled yet?
That's about it. No, actually, it's
I mean,
funny.
you've almost died twice.
Yeah, those
in
were
a beautiful
dreams, but yeah,
family.
Yeah. No, I actually...
All you want is a lake house at this
all I want
point?
is a lake house. So I'm turning 40 in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And so I started this kind of process yesterday of reviewing like journal entries from my entire life. And it was really cool. I found some that I had written when I was 30 about my dream life by 40. Basically, because when I was 30, I looked at what did I do the last 10 years, like basically adulthood, 20 to 30. And then I reflected. And I was like, wow, I've done more than I realized. And I think for most of us, right, that's really valuable. To every day we should be celebrating what we did that day. And then I looked ahead. I'm like, what would be the dream for the next 10 years? And it was crazy. I didn't even realize I had that entry until I went and found it. And I almost every single thing except for lake house, it was on the list. In terms of family and all these things.
Is that one of those things where you write it down and then you forget about it for a few years?
Well,
or do you come back to it?
Yeah, so that's what's weird is that I had forgotten about it essentially. But I think that because there is the element of, for the most part, right, you want to set a goal and you want to revisit it every day and work towards it and make it happen. But then there's also those weird, I'm sure you've had those too, where you find something that you wrote 10 years ago and you haven't seen it for 10 years and it could be multiple things, but now it's actually happened.
That's interesting because I find that when I review my goals every day, I do a lot of beating myself up. Because in the micro, things move so slow.
Yeah.
And yet we have social media, so everybody else is crushing it every single day. Yeah. And so I have to look at my goals in more like 6 to 12 month chunks at most, because that's enough time to actually evaluate progress. Otherwise, I really beat myself up over that. Yeah. So just storing it away for 10 years or forgetting about it or whatever it is an interesting approach.
That's a strategy that you like. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got your new book, Miracle Equation, here, and
it's pretty. I do like the cover.
It actually is a vast difference between the two.
You can see self-publishing versus traditional.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about to start, because you have a really interesting business model behind publishing, which a lot of people can't figure out the numbers of publishing. Yeah. And when you had Miracle Morning, I know it wasn't like an overnight success. No. And then there was like an exponential curve to it, and then there were follow-up books, and then I want to digest like the path of this. So first of all, tell me when you published Miracle Morning and how you brought that to market. I think it's a really interesting story.
Yeah, I published it 12/12/12. I have brain damage, so I needed a date I would not forget. And that was a good one. So 12/12/12.
You're not kidding about the brain damage, right?
Brain damage, significant brain damage from a head-on car collision when I was 20. Maybe we'll get into that at some point. Yeah, so I self-published the book, and what happened was I started writing the book in 2008 or 9. It took about 3 years to write it. And I was under the impression, as many people are, that especially back then, that I have to find a publisher to be taken seriously. And for this book, if this book's going to actually change lives and reach people, otherwise it's going to be a self-published, nobody buys it book. And back then, self-publishing was kind of, again, it was not so mainstream as it is now. I mean, we're talking 12 years ago? The time flies. 11 years ago. And so
wait, hold on. 12/12/12 is not 11 years ago.
When I started writing it. Sorry.
Okay.
No.
So wait a minute.
7 years ago.
Do we fall into a different dimension?
7 years ago. Yeah. Anyway, so I didn't say I was good at math, but brain damage. Remember, all right. I'll just keep falling back on that excuse anytime it serves me. By the way, but I ended up. I hired a gal who wrote a book proposal for James Arthur Ray, who got $1 million advance for his book, and she wrote a few other big book proposals. And so I was on a webinar of hers, and it was a teleseminar. This was before webinars. It was a teleseminar, and I thought. I'm going to hire this woman. I'm going to, forget that she taught me some great stuff.
What were you doing before you wrote the book, by the way?
So my background is direct sales. 2006, I hit Hall of Fame with the Cutco company, right? Uh-huh. And then I started into my dream career, which was keynote speaker. But back then I was making like, $1 grand a year. I mean, I wasn't making a lot. I was doing colleges and high schools.
And were you talking about sales as...
No, I was sharing my story of being had on by a drunk driver, right? All of that and how I overcame that, and then the lessons around that could help students to be happy and overcome their challenges and all those. So speaking of high schools and colleges, and then I wrote my first book in 2006 called Taking Life Head On, about the car accident, right? And then I never really had a dream or intention to write another book. It was like I have a responsibility to share this story with the world and help some people. And that book it got good reviews, but it didn't sell that many copies. Typical self-published book, right? Nobody knew about it. And but the main source of income for me was coaching. So when I left Cutco in 2006, I went, what am I qualified to do? Like this writing thing, I'm probably not going to get rich from that. The speaking thing is going to take who knows how long to build. What am I qualified to do to make money? And the answer was, all I've done at that point is 6 years of selling a lot of Cutco kitchen knives. And so I went, I'm qualified to coach fellow sales reps on how to do that, right? So that's what I was doing to earn money, was one-on-one coaching. And then in 2011, I launched my first group coaching program, and that was like it got to 220 members at its peak.
Okay, so that was your business.
Yeah.
And then you wrote The Miracle Morning.
Yeah.
And you do this proposal. You think you're going to get $1 million advance, and
I did not. So what happened
you did
was,
not get $1
well, I
million
didn't go
advance.
for it. So right when as I was researching, we spent all this time in the proposal, and then I went, oh, wait. The more I researched it, my conclusion was this. I went, so wait, if I go after a traditional publisher, I have no platform, so I have no leverage, so I really can't get any significant advance. So they will get all of the rights to the book. They will take all of my royalties. And because I have no platform and no credibility, they're not going to invest time and energy into putting a lot of marketing dollars behind me. So I have to do all the promo anyway. So I really threw kind of a Hail Mary, and I followed James Redfield's track, who wrote the book The Celestine Prophecy, that he self-published. Then it sold a lot of copies, traditionally published it, and now he sold 14 million copies. So I thought, I'm willing to put in the work. I might as well keep the rights and the royalties until I've created a significant enough reach with the book that traditional publishers will call me and be like, hey, what's the right? So I had no idea if it would work.
So the interesting thing is, you didn't come out of the gate with a platform.
No.
But you just hustled for as long as it took in order to sell enough books to where Hal Elrod now has a platform. Yeah. And my understanding is you just did a ton of podcasts. Is that right?
Yeah, that was so. I did podcast interviews and speeches. The irony here is that the Miracle Equation we're going to talk about, that's the new book that's coming out. The Miracle Equation, though, the concept, not the book, I created when I was 20. So about 6 years before the Miracle Morning was a concept, and then it was the concept of the Miracle Equation that I used to promote the Miracle Morning. And so essentially, we'll get more into it. Unwavering faith, extraordinary effort. So what I did is I thought, I'm willing to commit to put forth whatever effort is necessary to share this message in this book with as many, millions of people, right? That was actually my goal, was 1 million copies or change 1 million lives one morning at a time. And my goal was, in the first year, I don't know how, right? They call that uninformed optimism or delusion, right? One of the two. And I thought, I don't know how.
Brain damage.
Or brain damage, but I'm going to change 1 million lives this year with the Miracle Morning. And I thought, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So I self-published it. I didn't traditionally publish it because I just thought that was the better route to go. In the first year, I didn't sell 1 million copies, Ryan. I sold right around 10,000, give or take.
And that's a good book launch in most worlds.
Yeah, for a week. If you want it New York Times, that's the first week, right? Not the first year, the first week.
But still, most...
Oh, you're saying that's decent for most books.
Yeah.
Sure. So, but for anybody listening, right, I was 99.9% short of my goal, right? 990,000 copies short of my 1 million copy goal. And as you're going to find out today, as we dive in today, is the only variable is really time. Is that we often set unrealistic, not goals, but time frames. And so I remember, I don't know why this number stuck in my head, but I remember thinking, maybe it's because I was around 30 years old. I thought, maybe it'll take me 30 years to reach 1 million people. I was off by the 1 year mark, obviously, by far. Maybe it'll take me 30 years, but I'm committed to do whatever it takes because I was getting emails from people saying, this is radically changing my life. Yeah. And so I thought, I have a responsibility to change these 1 million lives for as long as it takes. So during the first year and a half, I did over 150 interviews on other people's podcasts. I gave 40-something speeches. I did over a dozen television interviews, local and national, like Good Morning Houston, Good Day, NBC's Daytime, you name it. And so I put forth extraordinary effort, and I still only sold 10,000 copies, but I kept going. And eventually, year after year after year, I stayed committed to the goal. And it took 6 years for me to surpass 1 million copies sold, and now we're at 1.7, 1.8, and it just keeps going.
There had to be some sort of a tipping point there.
There was. And I actually listened to the tipping point when a friend said it to me when I was getting discouraged. I was talking to my friend Brianna Greenspan, and she goes, "I'm going to send you a book." She goes, don't give up, Hal. Like, you'll get there, but you got to reach this tipping point. I'm like, what's a tipping point? Right? And so it was 18 months for me to get to the first month. I sold 1,800 copies, and it took 18 months to get back to that amount sold in a single month. I mean, I was down to 80 copies by like month 4, and it was Pat Flynn's podcast was actually, I think that combined with enough people doing it, kind of critical mass, and it all kind of hit at the same time, and that's when it went from nothing to 5,000 copies a month, and then just kind of kept going.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's really interesting to me is I know there's another business model behind this, which is not just selling more books, is that you brought on other co-writers for other branded Miracle Morning books, and there's like 11 or 12 of them now, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I think 13, 12 or 13, yeah.
So that is a completely radical shift on the publishing model. Would you explain that?
Yeah, so it happened organically. I'm a very non-strategic person where I don't have this master plan that I'm rolling out. I literally am kind of a wake up and be like, all right, I'm moving forward this today, and I just keep going in the same direction. So most of the stuff I've done, people go, was that your plan? I'm like, no, it happened. And the way that happened, a buddy of mine called me and he said, we were former colleagues at Cutco, and now he's a top realtor, runs an office. And he said, Hal, have you thought about doing like a Miracle Morning series? Specifically, every agent in our office that's read the Miracle Morning, they've all skyrocketed their sales. And he goes, and so have I. And he said, so I'm thinking like Miracle Morning for salespeople. I said, it's crossed my mind, but you want to write it? You want to co-author it, right? And he doesn't have a platform. He's like, again, it's just, sure, let's go. And so we co-authored the book, and that was the first. And then now it's, I don't know if you know Honoré Quarter.
No.
Honoré's become a good friend. So she's now my 50-50 business partner. In fact, after book 1, I think, in the middle of it, early on, I met this gal, Honoré, and she's written like 40 books on her own, and she has a book series for single moms. And I just thought, wow, she's qualified more than I am to launch a series. And so now we partner with co-authors like Joe Polish and Cameron Harold and people that are experts in their space. And then I have a template that they kind of fill in and create, 60% new content. And it's worked. I mean, all of the book series books are rated higher than the original ones.
And that became its own business off kind of the success that you had just beat down the door of for 18 months. It's really interesting how I think oftentimes we experience success in the way that we didn't expect.
Sure.
But it comes off of us grinding towards one singular goal.
Yeah.
And that's why the actual philosophy of the miracle equation is interesting to me, the idea of faith and extraordinary effort.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, hard chargers like me and you always have multiple goals.
Sure.
And it seems like the extraordinary effort part requires singular focus. But it's not like you've only had one goal over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So explain to me how you can do multiple goals with the necessary effort that it requires.
Absolutely. And this is, so in 2005, that was the transformational year for me, like a quantum leap where I went from achieving pretty good results to like beyond what I ever imagined possible. And
at Cutco?
Yes, and I was part of it. So, well, actually, to answer your question, you're going to see that I achieved like 10 goals that each one of them would have been like a singular.
Okay.
That would have been the best year ever.
You have my attention.
Yeah. And so here's what happened. So I had hit Hall of Fame with Cutco, and I went to a conference in February, and I was like, I'm done. I'm not even taking notes of this thing, dude. I'm just collecting my awards, and I never have to sell another knife again, right? Nothing wrong with selling knives, but I was like, I'm done, And so I was moving on to the next phase of my life, and I saw two people in our region, right? They were two of the top reps in the country, and they got the coveted Rolex for the highest level of sales in our company. And I could care less about a Rolex. In fact, I sold mine. I didn't want it. I don't care. But I had this pain. And if anybody's listening, right, like if you really get present, I think that all of us at some level can get in touch with some degree of this pain. And it was the pain of unfulfilled potential. And I realized, I watched them walk and get their award, and I went, I never did that. I'm about to leave this company having never really given it my all. Like, I had broken records, but I was I would break a company record for like the biggest month ever, and then I'd be like, cool, I can just take the next month off, right? I would just take a vacation until I ran out of money, and I'm like, oh, gotta go break another record, right? So I worked in these sprints, and I went, I never fulfilled my potential as someone who could consistently show up for 365 days, right? And I thought, I can't leave. I got to give it one more year, which was a radical emotional shift from like, dude, I'm done. And so I pulled out my computer and I wrote my goal for 2005. And then I ended up deleting the word goal and I wrote my mission. Because you think about language is really important, and the goals are something that we set, and we often set them. It's fun to set them. It's a cute exercise.
We forget about
them. We don't hit them. We don't look at them. And each year, it's like it's more of a fun exercise to do it, whereas we're not really committed to actually doing whatever it takes to hit them. And so I thought mission holds different weight. Like military organizations carry out life or death missions. They don't hope they don't die. Like it's all or nothing, right? Humanitarian organizations carry out missions to save people. And I thought, this is going to be my mission. And in the new book, The Miracle Equation, that's what I have people focus on is you've got to get clear on your mission. And in simple terms, it's just what is the single most important goal of all of your goals? What's the one? And the way that I look at how you figure out the importance is which goal would enable you to develop the qualities and characteristics that you do not right now possess, or at least at the level that they could be, that would allow you to achieve any goal you ever set. And that's the real purpose of a goal, right? Jim Rohn, I think, taught that decades ago, that it's not about hitting the goal. Most of us think in this black and white paradigm it hurts us more than it helps us, where it's like, if I hit the goal, well, I succeed. And if I don't hit the goal, then I have failed. But it's like, no. Who you become during that process of putting forth extraordinary effort to achieve a goal far outweighs the value of whether or not you hit any individual goal. Yeah. And so the point of the mission, though, is this, and this is really to directly answer your question about, well, we've got more than one goal, is that that year I set all my goals for the year, and there were some pretty radical goals. The first goal was to go out and double my best year ever in sales, which if you're in business, right, to increase your revenue by 100% is pretty intimidating, right? 10% is like, okay, I can get a little better, right? 30%, 50%, you're like, but 100% was terrifying. And so what I
100% on you were already smashing records.
Exactly. I mean, I was my previous two best years out of 50,000 sales reps in the company, to give you kind of perspective, I was number 6 one year and number 5 the next year, right? So I was trying to not just double like I suck and I don't work, so I'm going to stop being lazy. It's like I'm performing at a record-breaking level and I have to double that to fulfill my potential. And so I decided that if I did that, I could do anything. But that year, I thought I also have other goals that are really important, because remember, in my mind, I was done with Cutco. So my goals before I went to that conference were, I'm going to write my first book this year, which that's a big undertaking. I thought I want to launch my speaking career. That was my dream, is to be a professional keynote speaker. And I want to launch a coaching business to kind of support myself.
And that was after you decided you were going to leave Cutco.
Yeah, so these were the goals.
Now that's not happening. And so all that has to get rearranged somehow.
So now I'm going, okay, do I put all those goals off till next year? And then as I don't know, what, I just was inspired and I go, dude, what if I did all of it? What if I doubled my best year in sales ever while I wrote my first book and published it, and I launched my speaking career and I launched a coaching business, and I wanted to get in the best shape of my life and put on 20 pounds of muscle. And that year I put on 70 pounds of muscle at 5.7% body fat. I don't even know if that's healthy. By the way, I don't think that's healthy.
17?
17 pounds of muscle and at 5.7% body fat that year. And like I said, I don't know if that's healthy to be at 5.7% body fat. But and then I also that year my goal was I literally was just like I took the ceiling off. I go, I want to meet my wife. I'm tired of dating. I'm ready to settle down. I thought I just got into rock climbing. I thought I want to rock climb 3 days a week. So at the end, and I think there's more. Oh, and I thought this isn't meaningful to me unless I lead a group of my colleagues to exceed anything they've ever done in the same way that I'm trying to do for me. And that year, I led a team of 20 sales reps, and more reps surpassed the highest level in Cutco that were on that team than in the 50-year history of the company. I wrote and published my first book. I gave my first 2 paid speaking engagements. And I'm going to explain how this all fits into the mission, right? And I launched my coach. I had 5 paying coaching clients before the year was over while I was still selling. I doubled my best year in sales ever. I did it the final week. I mean, it was to the wire.
You basically said I'm going to have the best year ever, and then you did.
And then I did. And here's where it's counterintuitive. The idea of mission scares people because they go, well, I can't just commit to one goal. I've got all these important goals, like you said. And so for me, here's what having a mission does. All it is you set 5 goals, 6 goals, 8 goals, 3 goals, whatever, and you go, which of these is the most important and would be the most beneficial for my future, my present and my future? And then here's what it does. All it does, Ryan, is it organizes your time. When I woke up in the morning, the rule is I wasn't allowed to go to the gym or open my computer to write or get on the phone to make calls to get a coaching call, right? I wasn't allowed to do any of that until I engaged in the activities that I had predetermined would make my mission inevitable. And so that's it. And every day we wake up and human nature is to pursue the path of least resistance, right? So it's like, I'll just check email. We look at our goals and go, which of these is the least scary, has the least potential cause of failure, on and on. And we just do the easiest thing.
Yep.
And it becomes habitual, and the year ends and you go, what happened? But when you commit to a mission, at the very least, that's going to happen by the end of the year.
And so what was the singular mission that in 2005?
It was to double my sales.
Okay.
And in the new book, right, the 2 decisions, unwavering faith and extraordinary effort, I always say that at first glance, those are very unexciting. And you go, yeah, so I got to believe in myself and work hard. Cool, check. Like, teach me something I don't know. But part of it, like with the extraordinary effort, is how do you make it feel ordinary? How do you make it systematic and recurring so that the effort happens like you're on autopilot, right? You could call it habits or whatever. But here's what I did. Here's how I took the fear out of a really audacious goal like doubling my best year ever. I went, what's my process, right? And that's what I want if you're listening. What is the process that you could predetermine and commit to? And if you commit to it over an extended period of time, your goal moves from possible to probable to ultimately inevitable, right? If you do one thing consistently, that, like for example, if you write 1,000 words a day, well, writing a book might be scary, but if you commit to a word count every day and you hit it more often than not, the book gets written, right? It's not, there's no fear. It just happens. So for me, I went and figured out what was the best year I had ever had before. How many calls did I make on average every single week? And it was 105 calls a week, just over 20 a day, 5 days a week. And I thought, doubling my sales is intimidating, but making 40 calls in a day compared to 20, I've done that before, never consistently for a year, but I've done that before. And so here's the secret to success. Predetermine your process and then simply commit to that process without being emotionally attached to your day-to-day results. And if you stay committed over an extended period of time, you eventually get where you want to go.
Yeah, one of my favorite books is Straight Line Leadership.
I just put it in my shopping cart today from your
green
video.
One right there.
Yeah.
It's like one of the must-reads. And he says, if you have a goal, find out what it takes, what it costs to get that goal, and then determine if you're willing to pay the price.
That's it.
So for you, you're like, well, if I double the one metric that's working and I just do it, then that will at least make it probable for me to hit the goal. What I've experienced is that some of those calls are more impactful than others. And as a result, I'm guessing you didn't have to make 40 calls a day. Did you make 40 calls?
I think it ended up being less. I don't remember the number. I think it was 30 something at the end of the year when I totaled it back up, And that was simply me just not hitting my call numbers every day. And, but it ended up working out with not doubling the calls, but increasing them by about 50%, increased in double the sales. I got higher closing percentage and higher average order size, and everything just kind of played itself out.
Yeah, so you did hit the goal, right?
Yeah.
And so what you're saying, I think, is that by having the singular goal, it basically created the momentum, and it forced you to schedule the other things that were most important to allow you to hit the other goals. Is that what you're saying?
That first and foremost, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then the second piece of it though too is by committing to that singular goal, and it's the one that is the most meaningful. So you're now counteracting your human nature to follow the path of least resistance, because you're doing the thing that has the most significant consequences in your world this year. And when you do that every single day, you reach the ultimate goal, which isn't the goal itself. It's you become the person that you need to be, developing the qualities and characteristics of beyond what you've ever been before. And now you are more capable and more deserving of achieving any goal that you ever set. And that's where the value extends far beyond the goal, because only the growth lasts forever, right? Well, if you hit a goal, you spend the money, whatever, only the growth lasts forever.
So Hal, I can kind of relate to this because I think it was 2015 or 16 for me. I was a new dad, and I was scaling a company. We were thinking about selling the company. I was building my audience, and my podcast really, it was just starting to take off. And I decided to get into the best shape of my life all at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was the most productive year of my life. And it was also becoming a new dad, and my kid didn't sleep for 14 months, right? So there was literally no time to do what I did, and yet I got it done.
Yeah.
But then I was exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, I still feel like I'm paying for those years.
Yeah.
So it was by sheer will and force that I made that happen. It wasn't joyful. It was incredibly energy exhausting.
Okay.
You're a happy dude. You never seem tired. You almost died twice. So how? My immediate response is like, that sounds like grinding, and I don't know that I can grind like I did back in 2015 or 16 again. So how do you go all in on that goal without it feeling energy exhausting?
So, I mean, for me that year, right, if I actually break down what it took time-wise. So my 40 calls a day was 2 hours of calling, right? Basically every 20. And that, by the way, if you're listening and you're trying to figure out your mission, your goal, and how do you predetermine your process, it's like you want it to be the simplest activity. So for me, it was like 20 calls a day, and you want to figure out how long does that take you. That way okay, so 1 hour a day I'll do this, 1 hour a day I'll do this. So for me, it was an hour in the morning to make my calls, and then an hour I would do it in between appointments. So I would try to get the next 20 done on my cell phone in between so if I'd get to a customer's house 30 minutes early, right, I would pull over, I'd make 5 calls, get to the next one, pull over. So I tried to get my calls done before I even got home. And then if they weren't done, I would get home and I'd make 5, 10, 20 calls. And then the actual appointments themselves, I believe I averaged scheduling 16 appointments a week. And an appointment on average, I would schedule them 2 hours apart with 90 minutes plus drive time. So if you actually look, that's 32 hours, right? So I was working 32 hours a week on appointments and in the car, plus 2 hours a day times, right, 5 days, so 10 hours. So I was only working 40 hours a week.
Okay.
So I mean,
on your singular goal.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So where was the time for everything else?
I think, okay, so that's 40 hours a week, right? So that's basically a job, right, on my singular goal. And you imagine if anybody just picks one goal and works 40 hours on it, that's a lot of time they're putting into that. And then I would go to the gym in the morning or in the evening, right? I would at night I would do my Yahoo personals, Match.com, bought them. That's how I met my wife, by the way, the internet dating success story. And then I led my team. I did one call a month with them. Or one call a week every Sunday for an hour. And I think part of it, to your point of like that year for you wasn't joyful. I think that it is important that we have goals that energize us. And even if maybe not all our goals, maybe some goals, it's like, well, I got to do this one to make money, but I don't love my job or whatever. Have enough goals that energize you, that do bring you joy. Like I loved rock climbing every week, and I loved working out, and I did yoga, and so I loved the calls where I led my team. I mean, there's a lot of times where I was exhausted, I didn't want to be on the call, but for the most part, those gave me energy because I was helping other people. Yeah,
if you hate the goals, I mean, And I was certainly in resistance to a lot of that. Like, I mean, becoming a new dad is a huge adjustment, obviously, So that makes sense. And also there's just a sense of, if you go all in on one, everything just kind of finds its place.
It does, yeah.
And that's what you're saying about working out and your calls. Whereas most of the time, I think we overthink every goal and we create conflicting processes over how we're going to accomplish each one.
Yeah.
But the truth is, if all the thinking goes into the one and all the energy goes into the one, I find that it just kind of, the rest just fills in the space.
Yeah, it's like that. What is it? Stephen Covey that has the big rocks where he actually demonstrates it by
That's
putting
exactly
them in a jar.
Thinking.
Yeah, right. And then puts the pebbles and then the sand, and that really is it. Everything else kind of finds its place. And one thing that's so important is to create what I call a foundational schedule, which is not rocket science, but especially if you're an entrepreneur. What entrepreneurs, a lot of, there's that freedom, and they wake up and they're like, dude, I can do whatever I feel like. And they just bounce around like a pinball, kind of like, ooh, I'll check some email. Now I'll record a podcast. Now I'll write. For me, if you look at my schedule, and it started back then, every hour of my day is scheduled. And occasionally I will schedule free time for 3 hours in the afternoon, and I'll be like, so I have the space to just do whatever I want. But for the most part, my schedule from 3:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. is scheduled, and I've got dinner with the family in there. I've got kids' story time. I've got kids' bath time. I've got the gym is in there. I go at 6:15 to Orange Theory. All of everything is in my schedule, including fun time, including free time. But that way, you never wake up and you go, well, what should I do right now? You're like, no. If I look at my schedule, I know what I'm doing every minute of every day, and it's something that it jazzes like. It excites me. I've created the schedule in a way that makes me excited. Gym time is when it fires me up to be, right? Email time is when I want to answer emails, right? So if you're an entrepreneur, don't overindulge in the freedom. So it's detrimental. Yeah. Create a foundational schedule that you know what you're doing every hour of every day.
Yeah, and I have often had resistance to this personally because I want the unstructured.
Yeah.
So I find that even if I just schedule the uninterrupted time, then I'm naturally going to get interrupted all the time.
Yeah.
So if I think, well, I want to be unstructured, the interruptions are going to make that not happen. Sure. But if I just block out, this is my uninterrupted time, well, now I get to have what it is that I wanted. So if you schedule the things that you want to do anyway, that's like, for me, a way that I experience my freedom. I still have to be protective of my freedom. Freedom does not just happen even when you're financially free. You have to schedule what it is that you want to be doing. And so I have resistance to what you're saying, but I also know that it's true.
Yeah, that's the irony, right? Is that structuring your schedule gives you more freedom because it gives you freedom from having to worry about or think about or put energy into what you're going to do. And it's kind of like the old Steve Jobs and who else? Zuckerberg, right? Just they wear the same clothes every day, which I do too. You recognize this. I just wear this outfit all the time, just to keep it simple, right? So they don't have to make any extra decisions. And gosh, if what you wear causes decision fatigue, well, then how you spend every moment of your day sure as hell is going to cause a lot of decision fatigue.
Yeah, I get it. So you've almost died twice. And you tell the story of the car accident fairly publicly, but I haven't heard you talk as much about cancer.
Yeah.
And you're given, I think, a 30% chance of living.
30% and then downgraded to 10.
I don't know about that part.
Yeah.
You're downgraded to 10.
So what happened was the cancer that I had was very rare and aggressive. So this was 2 years ago. I woke up in the middle of the night, unable to breathe. It took like 2 weeks of having 16 pounds of fluid drained from my lung and seeing multiple hospitals and specialists before they could figure out what the heck was wrong with me. They misdiagnosed me with pneumonia at first. And then that wasn't it. And so, it turned out it was this really aggressive cancer called acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which surprisingly for kids is a common, very curable cancer. But if you get it as an adult, it's a 30% survival rate. And so that was, not I always say if you're a glass is half empty kind of person, that's a 70% you're going to die, soon. And when I went to MD Anderson, which is one of the top cancer hospitals out in Houston, Texas, they did more testing and they discovered that not only was my lung collapsing, but my heart was on the verge of failing. And they had to do an emergency procedure that day to drain my heart of fluid, or I would go into cardiac arrest. My kidneys were on the verge of failing. And then they discovered I had this cellular mutation called a NUP1 mutation. And that's where my diagnosis went. Well, like if you didn't have that, you'd have a 30% chance of surviving. With that, you literally, so 10% was like a guesstimate. They had no, like if you Google it, it's page 4 before the first mention. So you think about like what in the heck in the world can you Google that you have to search 4 pages to even find a mention of it? And that's how rare it was. So yeah.
And that's the end of the story.
That's the end of the story. So, no. So, all right. So here we go. I thought I would let you, ask another question. So, all right.
Well, first of all, my guess is that the miracle equation plays into that, where you just said you're going to have unwavering faith that you're going to be in the 10%.
Yeah.
And then you're going to make whatever effort is necessary. And your singular goal, your mission became beat this thing.
Live for my family. Yeah. Yeah. And it really is. On the day I was diagnosed and told I had a 30% chance of surviving, you can imagine, right? You immediately start obviously thinking a lot and going, what does this mean? Oh my God. And then it quickly goes to, how am I going to live? How am I going to beat this? And one of the first thoughts,
I'm not sure that's the case that everybody has that. That everybody says, how am I going to live?
I think why me? Or
Well, why me? What? Like, how do I take care of my family once I'm gone? What happens when you die? Is this going to hurt? But you immediately went to, how am I going to beat this?
How am I going to beat this? Well, no, and actually, believe it or not, here's what's interesting. I immediately went to, the first thing I said, I called my wife. She happened to be out of town with my kids. So that was a hard part too. I've been diagnosed with cancer. And it was actually, the first diagnosis was, Hal, we don't know what's wrong with you. It might be like this weird virus or infection that we can't identify, or you might have cancer. And at that time, I mean, really for the last 20 years, I've lived an anti-cancer lifestyle. Like, I eat clean. We have no chemicals in my house. I'm like a hippie. And so I'm like, and it wasn't denial. It was just like logically, I'm like, Doc, I can't, like, I don't think it's cancer, but let's figure out what's going on. But I call my wife and I tell her, hey, sweetheart, and this is what it might be. And she was with my mom actually at the zoo. So she had to tell my mom, your son has cancer and has a 30% chance of surviving, right? And I think they kept it for the kids from a little bit. But I said, sweetheart, and my wife starts bawling, right? And, and I was already at peace with it, but I'm bawling because she's bawling, and I'm imagining what this is like for her. But I said, here was my first thought. I said, sweetheart, two things. Number one, I will beat this. And number two, I said, this will be the best thing that ever happened to me. And I know you probably don't want to hear that, or you probably, you don't like that. I said, but the car accident, when I was hit head on by a drunk driver and I died for 6 minutes and I was told I would never walk again, it was the hardest thing I ever went through. It was unimaginable. It was the best thing that ever happened to me because it gave birth to my life's work. It enabled me to become the person that I am today, and that helps people, and that just whatever. I said, this cancer to me is just a bigger, scarier, newer version. And I go, and I don't, Lord knows why I'm tested. Like, I thought the once was enough, but so I literally was like, I decided this will be the best thing that ever happened to me. And you think about that, that's a lens that now every aspect of it is, what am I going to learn from this? How am I going to use this experience to help other people, to help myself, right? I mean, that was from day one. And then, the other thing that you just said, which I already forgot what it was, but that was probably my second. How am I going to beat this? I mean, that was the next question, right? How am I going to beat this?
What's my process?
What's my process to beat this? And I'm...
So I hear that as why and how. First you decide why.
Yeah.
Or what, and then it's how.
Yeah, and the why is not, right? It's not the why me.
Right, yeah.
Why did this happen,
Why does
God?
this
I don't
motivate
deserve
me?
this. It's a curiosity from a place of, what's the benefit in this? What is the benefit in this? Or the purpose, or the old adage, everything happens for a reason. I believe that, but not the way most of us, I think, are conditioned to think about that idea, which is, why did this happen? And they turn to God, or to I don't understand. Why would this be happening to me? Why? I don't deserve this. I'm a good person. And for me, it's a why from a place of curiosity, right? Of no, everything happens for a reason, but it's our responsibility to determine the reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And we can choose reasons that are based on victimhood and, oh, poor me, why, or reasons that serve us and serve humanity and serve our family, and that we all will benefit from.
Now, I know that part of your process that you wanted to do is you wanted to go the natural route.
Yes.
You wanted to go the
holistic.
You wanted to fight it without doing chemo and that route.
Yeah.
And you were not given that option.
Yeah.
And so your original process was removed from you.
Yes.
And so there's not, as far as I know, some miraculous cure you found. You didn't take some herb, right, that just nixed it. You went through it. Yeah. And you had to do it the traditional way. And I'm guessing that commitment to that goal carried you through. Reason I frame it that way is I'm curious if medical doctors factor in that unwavering faith into your recovery.
They do not. Very few do. There are
and
a few.
I'm sorry. I don't mean in like a woo-woo sense.
No, yeah,
I just mean do they give credit to the people who have that type of commitment to being the ones who actually beat it?
So very few doctors do that I have met. Now I have read there's a book called Love, Medicine, and Miracles by Dr. Bernie Siegel, who's a famed oncologist, right? Who and he literally says the single common factor in every patient that he's worked with that has beat cancer, and many of them have not, of course. Yeah. He said is that they had a commitment that I'm going to beat this no matter what. There's no other option, and that is the first element of the miracle equation. This is not unwavering faith in a woo-woo way. I'm not talking about manifesting. I'm not even talking about prayer, and I'm not anti-prayer. I'm not, but I'm talking about faith in yourself. and your willingness and ability to commit to do whatever it takes to achieve something. In other words, or overcome something. It's kind of the unwavering faith. That first decision leads into the second decision, which is extraordinary effort. And I'll make a slight correction to what you had said around my process.
Yeah.
So when I went in to meet this oncologist, who's one of the best in the world, and I said, hey, I'm not, no offense, I know you're like, chemo is what you do, but I'm not a fan of chemo. Like, I view it as poison, and I mean, it is. I had one doctor told me the objective of chemo is to kill the cancer before it kills you, because it's killing both of you at the same time. And the goal is that it kills the cancer first. And that's why a lot of people die from chemo, not from cancer. And I had one of the most horrific or intensive chemos. It was, people will go in for chemo like an hour to a month. I mean, everybody's regimen's different, but I would get 70 to 105 hours of chemo nonstop for 4 days round the clock, followed by the next session 3 weeks later was 5 days, and those would alternate for 8 months. And so, I mean, I lost 25% of my body weight, every hair on my body. But here's the difference is, the doctor said, Hal, I asked him, I want to cure this holistically. Can you support me in that? And I had never met the guy. This was our first meeting with him. And he says, Hal, I appreciate that you want to do that, but you don't have that luxury. You don't have a slow-growing tumor. You have a cancer that kills people in days or weeks. A week ago, you were healthy. Now your heart is on the verge of failing, your kidneys, and your lung. And he said, if you don't start chemo today, I would give you a few days, maybe a week to live. And I'm holding my wife's hand. She's squeezing it so hard, I'm wincing. And I didn't know this guy, so I didn't know his heart, right, or his intention. And in my mind, my skeptic went way up, and I'm like, dude, you're trying to sell me on chemo, right, by scaring me into that I'm going to die. And so there was kind of a middle finger a little bit in my head, and and I'm like, can we have 24 hours, doc, or 16 hour, can we have some hours to go talk about this? It's a pretty big decision. And he said, yeah, but I wouldn't wait, let me know in the morning, right? This was the afternoon. And so we go home and we Google it, and long story long, it is, he wasn't exaggerating. People die in days. And so it wasn't like, and I already ate such a clean, it was like, what am I going to do? Go from, like, I literally didn't know much improvement I can make in a lot of ways. So here was the decision that I made, and this was my extraordinary effort. I went back to the doctor the next day. We called him. We said, hey, we'll start chemo. Like, my wife and I concluded, like, this is no joke. If I want to live, this is my best option. Oh, and by the way, the closing factor in that decision was one of the best holistic oncologists in the world is in Houston, where I was going to be treated for chemo. And he's treated celebrities, and he cures people naturally. We called his office. His nurse went and talked to him. She came back and told him she goes, he wants to know what kind of cancer it is. Told her, came back, said, doc says your best bet is to do chemo.
Wow.
I go, if the best holistic doctor in the world won't treat me, because it's so rare, they have no success with it, so they're not going to throw a Hail Mary, right? So I start chemo, and I decided, I go, you know what? I'm going to do every holistic I'm going to research and do every holistic practice that I would do if that was my only option and I wasn't doing chemo, in addition to the chemo. So I'm going to give myself the best chance of surviving, utilizing the best of allopathic medicine and holistic medicine. And my doctors were really surprised at how well my body overall, I had some really hard sicknesses and ER visits, a lot of them, but for the most part, I responded better than most patients do. And it's because I was doing things to detox my liver. I was doing, I say this in the book, but it's a joke, but it's true. So I was taking 50 supplements a day. I was doing acupuncture. I was doing ozone therapy, and I was doing coffee enemas. And the joke is that there's no effort more extraordinary than sticking a tube in your butt 3 times a week and shooting 32 ounces of coffee up there, right? And if you want to know why I was doing that, you can Google it. But yeah, and that is, and I'm very beyond grateful to say that, it's just over 2 years now. I am in remission so far, and and on pace to live a long, healthy life with the wife and kids.
And happy.
Oh, I'm very happy, yeah.
Like, you're one of the happiest people that I know.
Thanks.
And it'd be really easy to feel like a victim after all of that.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like that unwavering faith and just the decision to say, I'm going to make positive meaning out of this is what keeps you driving forward and happy.
Well, I think that I just heard this, so I don't want to try to recite it because I'll butcher it. But basically, the concept that our greatest growth comes in our greatest adversity.
Yeah.
If you ask anybody, hey, what was the time where what have you overcome in your life? And they'll be like, oh my God, I went through a divorce, I went through this, I went through that, bankruptcy, right? And be like, hey, did that make you better, were you better off in?
Right.
Yes, of course. It's like, well, then why the hell do you live by the whole hindsight is 2020 thing, where you're miserable while you're going through shit, and then you look back and you're like, oh, that was really beneficial for me. I'm like, I'm gonna just go fast forward into the future and live with hindsight now by saying, how does this serve me? How can I grow from this? And just be grateful for every experience, good or bad, because every experience is an asset if you choose to learn from it, you choose to grow from it. And here's the thing. If I'm going through a difficult experience, whether it was like my car accident, they said I'd never walk again, or the cancer where, it's like, if I'm going through any difficult experience, I'd rather be happy and grateful while I go through the difficult experience than be miserable. And that's what I think people have trouble separating is you don't have to let your circumstance define your mental and emotional quality of life, right? It's like, go be the happiest and the most grateful and most positive you've ever been while you are going through the most difficult, challenging, and terrifying time in your life. And I just know from experience, we have that choice.
Yeah, amen to that, brother. The final question from me is, now everything is going great, as far as I can tell, right? You have a beautiful family, You're in good health, you've achieved everything that you wanted to achieve.
Except the lake house. I'm going to move in with Ryan.
Yeah, come on in, buddy. We have a guest room. So I'm curious now, do you still have a singular mission even when things are great? Or do you ease off sometimes?
Yeah, so this is an important piece of the mission, right? So mission changes based on, it can literally change based on, so you can have a mission for the year, right? Now, however, based on the ebb and flow of your year, there may be a month where you actually have to set your mission to the side and focus on a different mission, right? So, or you might have one mission that rolls out in the first quarter and another mission that rolls out, right? So there's there's a lot of flexibility around all of these concepts. So for me, my mission in life is to live to be 100 years. Like, that is my grand mission. And everything I do in my world, right, I make sure that health is taken care of first and foremost. My second grand mission is my family, right? Now, health is partly in service to my family, because if I die, that I can't be around to be there for them. So one of the things I do around that mission is, first and foremost, every morning, I am not allowed to read a business book until I read at least 10 pages out of a parenting or a marriage book. And I did, right? And what that does is, it does two things. Number one is, it ensures that every morning I'm learning and growing to be a better dad and a better husband. The second thing it does is, it literally uses logistics to remind me every day, oh yeah, these people are more important than any of the other things on my schedule that I have to work toward today. Another piece of that is, I go wake up my son and daughter. I have a 15-minute time block to gently wake them up and sing to them and say affirmations and rap, and I do voices with these stuffed animals, and right. But it's a 15-minute block where I'm connecting with my kids, and I book in my day with family in the morning and at night. I've got a bunch of practice. I go to Orange Theory. I eat green smoothies in the morning. I eat vegan at lunch. I eat paleo at night. I do sauna 3 times. Like, I do all these practices. So my foundational schedule ensures that my mission and all my priorities are in order. And in terms of, so I've got some global missions, right? Like bigger, beyond just a year. But this year, my first mission of the year was to launch the Miracle Equation, right? That was my first mission. And every day I woke up, I had to get that process. I had to engage in it, get the activities done. Now that book is out, my mission is now launching. Actually, my mission is shoring up my funnel. I'm going to be on the Today Show next month. So I've got to get all my emails and make sure I'm nurturing people, because I suck at that. So I finally hired someone to help me get better, like Ryan Moran, like you, buddy, to nurture people, right? And then, so that's the mission, right? It's literally a 1-month mission. The month of May, me and my team, this is what we're working on. And then I shift gears to my next mission, which is launching the Miracle Morning movie, the documentary, right? And that'll be about a 3, 4, 5-month mission. And then I'll shift to launching my event, right? So it's like, the missions, there's in some ways more than one, and you know what I mean? If that makes sense. But at any given moment, on any given day, I'm clear on the single most important mission, and my schedule aligns with that.
Yeah, and so when you've accomplished one mission and you have nothing left on the list for the year, you go back to living to be 100 and being an amazing father, an amazing husband. And
I will, and it's true, and I will go, like, if there's no work mission, which there usually is, but there will be times where there's not, for even for a week or for a month or for whatever, and I will literally go, like, I'll up level I'll up level health. I'll be like, ooh, what could I start doing now? What can I, like I recently joined Orange Theory and yoga class because I'm like, I was working out from home, but I'm like, man, I'm taking it way too easy on myself. I'm speeding through my workout like 20 minutes. Like I need someone that's pushing me, right? So that was a recent up leveling to my health. Actually, it was started in the month of May because my month that I turned 40. I'm like, all right, this is a great month to up level health and fitness.
Well, I usually conclude by thanking people for changing the world. Keep on changing the world is often my sign off. But like, dude, I mean, you're just the perfect example of if somebody changes themselves, they can change everyone around them and end up changing the world. So just keep on keeping on, man. Thanks for everything you're doing in the world.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate that.
Proud to call you a friend, Hal.
Ditto, brother.
And that's a wrap.
Woo!
That was hot.
Yeah, buddy. Is that good?
Yeah.
All right.
Every time I'm here, I'm like,
Hey.
hello, Hal. This long distance dedication goes out to Hal Elrod over from the lake house here in Austin, Texas. Sending a long distance dedication here on today's top 40. Are you ready for me?
All right, boss.
I see red lights. All right, Hal Elrod.